you for being here. We're a couple minutes past 9 o'clock, and I can see that folks are still joining the meeting, but as usual, we have a packed agenda, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Welcome to the Coalition on Homelessness October General Membership Meeting. I see a lot of familiar faces here in the audience. For those of you who might be joining us for the first time, the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness meets on the third Thursday of every month in the morning to share resources, present advocacy opportunities, to build power, and to create community. My name is Jason Austin. I'm the membership organizer. I'm joined by my small and mighty team of compatriots here, and we're all excited to have you with us this morning. We like to begin our coalition membership meetings by having a volunteer from the audience read our mission statement to ground us in the shared work that we are all engaged with. And do we have maybe a volunteer who would be willing to read that mission statement for us this morning?
I'd like to volunteer if I could, Jason.
Please, take it away.
My name is Constantine, and the mission statement of the Coalition on Homelessness: we mobilize our community to challenge systemic causes of homelessness and advocate for housing justice. Thanks, Jason. Can I share a few thoughts while we're here?
We would love to have you share a few thoughts. Thank you so much. For those of you who might not have had, your full cup of coffee yet this morning, our guest mission statement reader is the King County Executive. And if you were able to join us for our September membership meeting, you heard him suggest that we would be pleased with elements of the budget that he was going to be transmitting to the King County Council. And I think our folks here know that we've engaged in a breakneck journey in the last 30 days to try to make that vision a reality. So we're really honored and delighted to have you pop in this morning, and I'm gonna turn it over to you to say a few words about health through housing and whatever else you want to talk about.
Well, thank you, Allison. It has been a quick but rocky trip since we last met, and thank you for having me back. When we were last together, as mentioned, I was about to unveil my new proposed budget for the coming biennium. And as you now know, that budget included a proposal for a new 1/10% sales tax to house some 2,000 of our neighbors who are experiencing chronic homelessness. And I am thrilled to share with you that we made it happen, as you know, and with the help of so many people here in this meeting today. We proved again that government can do bold things, and not only that, can do them quickly when enough people feel that sense of urgency, the responsibility to act. Our new Health Through Housing initiative implements an approach that you have shared for a long time. The people deserve the dignity of a place to be, a bed to sleep in, a bathroom they can use without having to sign up on a clipboard, a place where they can build relationships and build community. Our COVID response helped reinforce this approach. It was based on dignity, based on compassion. And now we have a study from the University of Washington that shows that we can really share with the community in scientific terms what it means to provide people with dignity and stability, not just for preventing the spread of COVID, but for helping them gain stability in their lives. I know that members of the coalition played a key role in helping the entire community understand the importance of this effort and the urgency of this moment. And I mentioned urgency before. I think that the county council members and many city leaders felt the sense that this is the time that we can really act boldly. And I'm so grateful to all of you who participated, and especially to you, Allison. You were instrumental in making this happen. I also want, I mentioned the cities. I want to acknowledge that not every city is joining the effort. But yeah, I think they're not correct in their choices. And I think that we have chosen the right way. And I'm going to tell you right now that we and I am undeterred. We're going to prove through our actions how effective and important it is to have a place to call home. And over time, I'm confident that our effectiveness will persuade those who have chosen a different approach to join our collective effort. Although I can't stay long this morning, we have lots going on, including having just defeated Tim Eyman's I-976 at the Supreme Court in a unanimous vote. I wanted to stop by, I know, I wanted to stop by to say thank you for everything that you do, for how you showed up as we moved this proposal forward with speed. It was very, very difficult. And I want to invite your continued engagement and support and advice as our team now seeks to convert this powerful legislation into real change in our community, into stability, and into the dignity that we want to preserve for every human being. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here this morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're really delighted. We've long, as you suggested, understood that people need homes, and that this is the way to seize this dreadful moment and make something really significant and good happen. We're in it for the long haul, as you know, and our members live in and work in all constituencies in King County and beyond. So we had folks show up in Renton, in Bellevue, and they'll continue to show up, and we're with you. And we really, really agree that the urgency has existed for a long time. So it's wonderful to see that you seized this moment, and the council joined you and us, and we're excited to move this forward and also help people finish the census today. So we also have the Harborview Hall Prop 1 folks on the call, just to let you know. We'll be talking about that later.
Wonderful.
And we know we have to let you go, but invite you to come back some other time to just have more of a conversation with a little more advance notice.
Yeah, I would love to do that. And since you mentioned the county council, I want to give credit to the council for understanding the urgency and moving faster than usual, and with an 8-1 vote, yes vote, to impose a sales tax, which is a very difficult thing for folks to do. And they, I think, will be very enthusiastic in joining in, helping us offer people in very short order the housing they've long needed. So thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about the tremendous effort and the enormous victory, but only step one in the process of implementing health through housing. But, you know, I woke up the day after council took that 8-1 vote, and I thought, we have to celebrate this. Like, if we were in person, we would be cheering, we would have cake, we would be hugging each other. We just secured a dedicated revenue source of $50 million a year and up that doesn't have a sunset to create and support housing for people experiencing chronic homelessness all across King County. So we will talk a little bit more about that later on in our agenda, but I just thought, I woke up the other day and I thought, I'm going to see if Constantine can join us, because I thought you all deserve to hear from the exec directly. And so I'm really pleased that he was able to fit this in. And it's wonderful to see so many faces this morning. We do, as always, have so many people to hear from and important timely issues to talk about, and the world just keeps on spinning. We of course are going to touch on the fact that as of now, today is the last day to complete the 2020 census, which is a key way to ensure that every person in this country has some political power. So we're going to let Jason do his maybe last Census 2020 reminder to you and talk a little bit about that. But first I want to do another really fun thing, which is to introduce you to the newest member of the Coalition's Small and Mighty team. We, as you know, have been in a hiring process. We had a really extraordinary group of people apply, which is both wonderful and difficult, as I think anyone who's been part of a hiring process knows. And we're just delighted to introduce to you our new advocacy coordinator, Saleena Salongo. This is her first general membership meeting. I had to point out to her that normally in person we'd have snacks and coffee, and we're not really as formal as Zoom makes us be in our little boxes. But I thought that it would be nice, of course, to welcome her and to invite Saleena to just introduce herself briefly. And I'm sure you will all get to know her over the course of her work with you and your work with her.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, well, my name is Saleena Salongo. My pronouns are she, they. I'm just gonna try to introduce myself really quickly, but I'm coming to the coalition with about 6 years of experience in the healthcare sector. I recently completed my bachelor's in public health and global health from the University of Washington. So I'm bringing in a public health perspective into this coalition's work. I've done a lot of institutional advocacy with the University of Washington School of Public Health for racial justice. So I'm really passionate about health equity, social justice, economic justice, housing justice. And then just I'm gonna take off my professional hat because I really hate giving my LinkedIn elevator pitch. I just want to say I am somebody who grew up in deep poverty, and I have personal experience with housing insecurity and homelessness. So I'm bringing obviously my education, but I'm also bringing a deep passion that comes from my personal experience. So I'm really excited to get to know all of you, and I look forward to working with you further.
Well, as Sasha just put in the chat, we are so happy to have you joining our team. Thank you, Saleena. And a big welcome. Right after this meeting ends, Saleena and Jason are heading off to do some voter registration and last-ditch census engagement. So she has hit the ground running, as the saying goes.
Thank you, Allison, and welcome, Saleena. We're thrilled to have you on board. And Allison, as Allison mentioned, we will get to the census, but before that, let's stay on this topic of recent victories. Last week, Governor Jay Inslee extended the eviction moratorium through the end of 2020, thanks to successful statewide advocacy efforts from many of the folks that are on this call today. We're joined this morning by John Stovall, member organizer with the Washington Low-Income Housing Alliance, who's going to give us a brief overview of kind of how we got to this point, and then maybe preview what this fight might look like in the next year. John, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Jason. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, good to see some familiar faces, and always a pleasure to be in this space with all of you. So, and for those of you who I don't know, nice to meet you. I'm John. I'm the member organizer at the Washington Low-Income Housing Alliance. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the work that we do, but for those of you who aren't, we do statewide work around affordable housing, homelessness, and tenant protections policies, and also we are very much a movement building organization. And so we do a lot of advocacy and organizing as well. I also just quickly want to say it's really, really cool to see King County passing the 0.1% sales tax for permanent affordable homes, because that legislation was enabled by a state bill that we were all able to collectively pass this last year, House Bill 1590, which allowed county councils or local jurisdictions to pass that funding source by a councilmanic vote rather than a vote of the people. So it's just really cool to see kind of the full cycle of all this happening. So I'll jump into just some updates on the eviction moratorium at the state level. So as Allison mentioned, today is October 15th, which is simultaneously the last day to complete the census, and also the day of the day in which the eviction moratorium at the state level was set to expire, meaning that in Washington state, over 100,000 people would have been vulnerable to eviction on this very day, or maybe tomorrow, and possible homelessness had the eviction moratorium not been extended to the end of the year. So just quickly, some information, some background and data about, and I'm sure many of you are seeing this firsthand or with folks that you know throughout the state, so this is not news to anybody, but just in terms of some data that can paint the picture of where renters specifically are at right now, being roughly 7 or 8 months into the pandemic and the recession that has resulted from the pandemic. According to the Census Bureau's most recent Pulse survey data, more than 114,000 households, or 7% of all renters in Washington, are currently behind on rent. Among those impacted by being behind on rent, there are also significant racial disparities in that. Black households, for example, who are still feeling the impacts of past and current racist housing and racist economic policies, and who have on the whole been deprived of accumulating wealth, have fewer savings to fall back on, and who make lower than average wages on the whole than white households, have been hit especially hard by the COVID recession. And so because of this, Black households are 4 to 5 times more likely than white households to be behind on rent as a result of COVID-19. Latinx households, in addition, because of discrimination based on documentation status, on language access, and other structural barriers, are also several times more likely than white households to be behind on rent currently. So the eviction moratorium, which essentially prevents people from being evicted during the COVID-19 emergency for any reason other than an immediate threat or danger to the building or to the community, as well as there's like 1 or 2 other kind of loopholes in the existing eviction moratorium language. The eviction moratorium really, though, prevents people from being evicted for being behind on rent or for non-payment of rent. So it's incredibly, incredibly critical to prevent a huge increase in evictions, and a huge increase in homelessness, and also an increase in the racial disproportionality for BIPOC people among our homeless population as well. So the great news is that Governor Inslee announced last week that he has extended the eviction moratorium through December 31st of this year. So I'll post a link in the chat in a second to be able to send Governor Inslee a thank you message just through his form on his website, because this really is a big deal. And I mean, we know that folks are, when we have to continue to extend the eviction moratorium over and over for like a month at a time, it just doesn't alleviate the stress that that renters still feel when they're not sure whether whether a month from now they're going to be owing the rent that they are still behind on. So extending it for at least 2 months is really, it's good, and we will have to extend it again, of course. And then I'll talk about something else we'll be working on during, as part of the state legislature as well, that will hopefully be more long-term. But in terms of extending the moratorium, it's super critical for several reasons that he did this. So other than a handful of local jurisdictions around Washington that have passed their own specific protections, which include Seattle and other cities in King County, the rest of the state would have otherwise had to rely on the CDC moratorium, our federal eviction moratorium that the CDC put out roughly a month ago. And that moratorium was already, when it was introduced, while it's great for like other states who have nothing, it's better to have something than nothing generally, compared to our state moratorium, it's incredibly weak and has many loopholes, including the fact that it doesn't protect tenants from a no-cause eviction. So if you're behind on rent and you're month to month, your landlord could have still given you just a 20-day notice to move out and you'd be without a home. But our state eviction moratorium protects against that. And then similarly, or another sort of like weakness of the CDC moratorium was that it puts the onus on the tenant to fill out a form essentially stating that they sort of asserting their right under the CDC moratorium to say, I'm covered and here's why, rather than our state eviction moratorium, which basically covers all tenants automatically. And so it's really on the landlord to come up with a very strong argument that you are not covered, and it has to be because of a danger or safety threat to the building. And in addition, this week, the Trump administration also further weakened the CDC moratorium as well. So even this like federal moratorium that was already weaker than our states has been further weakened. So it's a good thing that we are not currently relying on that, but that we have a stronger moratorium. The other really important reason why it's good that Governor Inslee extended the moratorium is because it gives us more time to get rental assistance out to people on the ground in Washington. The eviction rental assistance program through the Department of Commerce has gotten is in the process of getting $100 million out through the state and to every single county, including King County. But all that money has not actually gotten to people yet. It hasn't gotten out there yet. So if we had an eviction moratorium lifted right now, people who would otherwise have the chance to get caught up on rent through the rental assistance program could potentially be evicted before they have the chance to do that. So it's just really important that we give ourselves more time to get rental assistance out and to potentially allocate more rental assistance at the state level. We are hearing that is absolutely on the table right now. It's not guaranteed, but it is on the table as a potential option. And of course, we need to continue our federal advocacy to urge Congress to pass another relief bill that includes rental assistance for people, because we know that the scale of the amount of money that we need in order to deal with the amount of debt that renters are accruing right now is really, really massive. So why don't I go ahead. I'm going to just share this link here. And this is if you want to send Governor Inslee a thank you note. It's very simple. You can just say, thanks so much for extending the eviction moratorium. It will help people in my community so much. And you can list any number of reasons why that's true for you. But you can also just feel free to include some of the language that I was just saying a second ago. In terms of the details of the language of this particular extension, the language is not public yet, so he hasn't posted the proclamation on the website yet. So we can't comment or analyze exactly what it looks like. There are likely to be some small changes, and so we'll have to just kind of take a look at it and see how it will likely affect renters. But we're hoping that it won't be super significant and that there will not be a massive weakening for people, and that people will be more or less as protected as they are currently. And then I also just want to acknowledge, and I know this is probably, this question tends to go through people's minds, like, hey, I know the eviction moratorium is great, but like, what about all the debt that people are accruing, and how are we going to deal with that? So the Housing Alliance knows, we know that the moratorium is not a complete policy solution on its own for this issue. It does prevent people from being evicted into homelessness right now, which is a huge threat and a huge problem. So it does solve that problem. But in terms of, getting people caught up on rent, making sure that people are not leaving with huge amounts of debt, which could then be potentially used as a barrier for them to get into future housing, and other issues with credit, we will need to be going to the state legislature this year and making an ask. So the Housing Alliance will be working with lawmakers on a more comprehensive long-term solution that will include some elements probably of the current eviction moratorium and an extension of it so that it is put into statute long-term, as long as we also have a way that directly deals with the debt issue as well. So we can't do one without the other, right? So I'm hoping, Nicholas, your question is, when does the legislative session begin? The second Monday of January, which I can't remember what date that is right now off the top of my head, but so coming up in just a few months. So I'm really hoping that we can connect with all of you when the legislative session starts around, and to work with you all on advocacy. Allison and Saleena and Jason, I know we'll be in touch.
Well, as usual, we will be starting before January because we like to be prepared. So, John, you're probably going to get an email shortly asking you to save a date in December as we do our legislative preview.
Perfect.
And I think between now and then, the other thing, of course, and forgive me if you mentioned this and I missed it, is that there are enormous efforts underway to require Congress to do its job because, of course, federal rent relief on a massive scale is needed. And we all know that things are in a terrible state at the federal level, but you may be seeing requests either from the Housing Alliance or from the coalition or both to speak up about urging Congress to take action before the end of the year.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you, Allison. We are, I mean, we're all working on this now. So it's not a wait till the session starts kind of thing. It's a ongoing forever thing, it seems like. So, so yeah. And I will just say, I'm going to put another link in the chat here. The Housing Alliance is really interested in uplifting any stories that any of you might have, or if you know someone who has a particular experience having fallen behind on rent, or if you know somebody who should be protected by the eviction moratorium, but whose landlord is violating that, or they're experiencing challenges related to this issue, or they're accumulating a lot of debt right now, or whatever it is that is related to being a renter during a pandemic, please use that link there to fill out a survey, and we'll follow up with you and work with you on how to share your story. I think I'm over time, but just wanted to give those updates, and thank you all so much for having me here today. And I'll put my email in the chat as well in case you want to reach out.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being with us this morning, John. All right, now we want to move now to our member update section. The Coalition on Homelessness is a membership-driven organization, and we like to give a little bit of time at these meetings to allow our members to provide updates and share upcoming opportunities. One of our members that we have been collaborating with is HopeLink. They are doing a training series with us that has another installment coming up at the end of this month. One of the trainers, Emily Goodright, is going to take just a minute here to give a quick overview of what that's going to look like. Emily, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Jason. So I'm Emily, and I'm a housing case manager at HopeLink, and also one of the Your Money, Your Goals trainers. And so first, for those of you who don't know, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on what the Your Money, Your Goals toolkit is. So it's a free financial empowerment toolkit developed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that organizations and providers can use to help individuals meet their financial goals, targeted specifically for people who are low income and homeless, but it's also a great resource for really anybody. The toolkit isn't a curriculum, but it's kind of a set of tools and information that can be used with clients at the right time, depending on what their goals are. So last month we had our first training in the series, which was really just an introduction to the Your Money, Your Goals toolkit and how to start that financial empowerment conversation with clients. And then this month on the 28th of October, we will be exploring module 1, which is focused on setting goals. So setting financial goals with your clients. In this training, we will be discussing how to create SMART goals, which I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with your clients related to finances. We'll also be looking at how to put goals into action and how to revise goals if circumstances arise for the clients that you're working with that might conflict with their current goals. We'll also look at how to plan for big life events and purchases. And in this training, we will be showcasing 3 different tools that you could use with clients and giving you some time to look at those tools and practice filling them in. And hopefully we will be able to do a small group activity with you all. So that is what's coming up at the end of October. So please sign up. It's from 11 to 12 on October 28th, and registration is open for that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily. I've put the registration link in the chat for those who are interested in attending. Another one of our member organizations is called the Mockingbird Society. They have a upcoming speaker series that they're in the middle of that they want us to know about. We're joined on the call this morning by Delcine Hackney with the Mockingbird Society, who's going to give us an overview. Delcine, thanks for being on our call with us this morning.
Hi everyone. Good morning. Sorry, I'm still waking up. It's really early. But thank you, Jason, for the introduction. Yeah, I'm Delcine. I go by she, her pronouns. I am the current Seattle and Youth Advocates Ending Homelessness Engagement Coordinator from Mockingbird Society. And we have a speaker series, like Jason mentioned, that is taking place of our annual luncheon event because we're all virtual and the pandemic is still going on. We have switched to doing a virtual series. On October 1st, we had our first speaker series, so the kickoff event, and that featured our executive director, Jim Theophilus, and Mockingbird alumni, Deontay Cruz, and they were just talking about their experience in the foster care system and what they were able to accomplish in the first 20 years. This is our 20th year, so this is kind of our big kickoff event, and tonight is actually the second series, or the second episode of the three-part series, and it features our director of practice innovation, Fernando Clara, and also one of our Mockingbird partners. Fernando really works hard to expand the work that we do globally. So I believe that Ariel, the Mockingbird family partner, who's also going to be joining that session today, works from New Zealand. So we're really trying to expand the work that we do to transform foster care and youth homelessness globally, and taking our practices and seeing what we can to expand it overseas. So the link to register, I'm going to drop it in the chat. It's at 7:20. That was an intentional choice. Oh, you already dropped the series. Thank you. Yeah, it was an intentional choice because our 20th anniversary. So it starts at 7:20 and it's about like 40 minutes, 45 minutes long, but it's a great space to just learn more about the Mockingbird Society and also the public policy issues that we've been focusing on the last 20 years. And yeah, just to meet more of the Mockingbird family. So if you're available, it'll be great. I'll be there. So yeah, feel free to join us. The link is in the chat, and feel free to send me any questions if you have any about it.
Excellent, Delcine. Thank you so much. Again, the sign-up link has been put into the chat and will also be available in the follow-up email. And I think with our member update section, we have time for maybe one more quick update if there's an agency that has a program change or an upcoming event that they might want us to be aware of before we go on. All right, well, again, we do try and make this space available at our meetings. So if you work for an agency that would like to use these meetings for a quick update or to share an event, please feel free to reach out to myself or one of our staff in advance of these meetings. So as Allison mentioned earlier, we do need to talk about the census because today is the final day to complete it. Our coalition fans have probably heard this update from myself and Allison many times over the months, but today truly is the day. On Tuesday, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the Department of Commerce acted within their legal authority when they cut data collection efforts short on the census timeline. The census was originally scheduled to be completed at the end of the summer. However, due to COVID-19 and the interruption of their operations, they pushed the deadline back to the end of October. Then, in I think the middle of August, the Trump administration attempted to cut that data collection timeline short, which then triggered an ongoing legal battle that worked its way through the court system. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that there is any further recourse as the Supreme Court ruled that the operations can be wrapped up. which means that today is the absolute last opportunity to get folks that you work with and for counted in the census. And the census is profoundly important in terms of where dollars get directed to public service programs. It determines where congressional district lines get drawn, everything from city council all the way on up to Congress. So ensuring that our community gets fully counted is extremely important for the full suite of implications over the next 10 years. If you're a case manager or a homeless service provider, we really want you to make a priority of today asking the people that are in your program if they filled out the census and to help them complete the form. Now, you don't need to have a traditional residential address in order to complete the census. Most folks complete the census by going online to my2020census.gov, which takes you to an online portal with 10 questions. The first question does ask about where you were residing as of April 1st. There is a checkbox in that portal that says, I do not have a street address. This will take you to a narrative description on their website, which will allow you to describe a location that the person you're working with spends most of their time. The narrative box allows for as many as about 400 or so characters. So try to describe either a street intersection, a public park, maybe a shelter or a location where maybe a client has a mailing address set up, something like that. Not every question on the census form needs to be completed to proceed. We encourage you to fill out that form as completely as possible. However, there are some questions, such as, for example, the sex question, which only offers a male or female option that may not reflect the identity of the person that you're working with. If no single question is going to stop the process. So again, encourage your folks to fill out the form as completely as possible. And the deadline is midnight tonight. So please make this a priority as much as you can. The census can also be completed over the phone as well. This process does take a bit longer. However, it's a good option for folks who might need language support. Again, we are devastated that the Supreme Court ruled this way. We wish we had the extra time to get folks counted, but we have the situation that we have. So please get your folks counted and reach out to us if you have any questions that might come up in this process. All right.
Thank you, Jason. I know you have done enormous work. I'm going to ask if you can just drop the link in the chat for the really useful document that you helped prepare that summarizes some of what you said about how to help someone without a traditional address complete the census. And what I want to just add to this is if you are a service provider, you can help people fill the census out. You can also, with their permission, complete the census for them. What we have had started to do and are continuing to do is actually to work with our colleagues in counties across the state to document how poorly the count of people experiencing homelessness was conducted by the census. We received information from Census Bureau employees last week that the count in King County was so low that they had been flagged by the Los Angeles Census headquarters, and they were in the process of reaching out to us to ask for additional assistance, which was both horrifying and frustrating and positive, because we thought that we would have until October 31st to remind them of all of the suggestions we had given them previously. But that doesn't look like it's going to happen. So here's the thing that I need to underscore for you. We can't have poor people, Black people, Latinx people, people of color, immigrants, refugees, LGBTQI, Two-Spirit people undercounted. So your job is to figure out what you can do today to ensure that people are included. We have been saying all along that the deduplication process is quite robust. That too is probably going to be curtailed. But I think the point here is you know your folks best, and if you can do a push today, we recommend doing that. So thanks to everybody who's already helped folks carry the census forward. You'll probably be hearing from us because we're going to continue to do some documentation about what did and didn't happen. And we've already been in touch with the Washington Attorney General's office about that conversation. So just very quickly, I'm going to move us to the next part of our agenda and let our wonderful guests speak. We're really grateful that you all have joined us to talk about this other parts of this election that are very important. This is a long ballot, so be prepared as you yourselves receive it. They got mailed out yesterday by King County Elections, and we have endorsed 3 of numerous worthy items on the ballot. The coalition's board endorsed 1 measure at the city level, 1 at the county, and 1 at the state level. And we have a really tremendous all-star group of people who are going to speak briefly about each of those items. I think the first one, somebody has maybe taken themselves off mute, so just a little reminder there. So the first one is, I'm thrilled to say that we have Elise Chayette, who is with the Harborview Health for All campaign, along with Ted Kleiner, who is with Harborview Hospital, to talk about King County Prop 1, not to be confused with Seattle Prop 1, which is coming up later, which is an extraordinarily important effort to raise public dollars to support our premier public hospital.
Thank you, Allison and Jason, and thank you for inviting us to speak. Can you hear me okay? Thumbs up? Okay, great. So I'll be brief because I know that Jason had information that was sent out, but I wanted to make sure everybody understood what was on the King County Prop 1 for Harborview, because it not only addresses the seismic issues of the hospital and expands the ability to serve everybody in the community, but it also has a particular focus on behavioral health services and an expansion of medical respite. For those of you who may not be familiar, we currently have a medical respite program that has about 34 beds that operates out of the Edward Thomas House. And medical respite is really for people who have had an acute condition, they've been in the hospital, and they're ready to be released, but they're homeless. And we can't release them back to a shelter. We can't release them to the street. They need some type of nursing care. And so medical respite is an opportunity for people to heal in an environment that's supportive, that allows them to recuperate in a safe environment. We are often at capacity at medical respite. There's a waiting list often to get onto medical respite. And this initiative would allow us to go from 34 beds to 150 beds inside of the revamped Harborview Hall structure. So it's really important for the communities we serve. In addition to medical respite, there's also the renovation of the Pioneer Square Clinic. In Pioneer Square, for those of you who are familiar with our current facility down there, it's been in Pioneer Square for about 40 years. It also needs to be structurally reinforced for earthquake proof. And the actual interior needs to be expanded so that the exam rooms can have more than one person, perhaps an interpreter and a provider. Right now, the rooms are really, really small. And so this will allow us to both bring it up to seismic standards as well as provide better health care. There are other aspects of the bond that speak to the emergency room so that we'll be able to see more people, not have as many people boarding and waiting for beds. And in a situation like a COVID pandemic, allows us to have the capacity to serve people, have one person per room so that we can deal with all of the infection control issues. So I'd encourage anybody who wants more information, there is a website, and I'll put it in the chat link about Harborview Prop 1. And also you can just text Harborview to 31996, put that in the chat as well to get more information. And we'd be glad to provide specific information to your organizations. What we're trying to do now is to get information out to the community because a bond requires a 60% vote. So it's not just a simple majority. And so getting 60% of the voters to vote for this is incredibly important. So please get the information out to your constituents. And if there's anything we can do to provide information to your organizations, we'd be glad to do that. So I think I'll stop here in the interest of time. If people have questions, you can pop them into the chat box, and we'll be around for the whole panel if at the end there's time to answer additional questions. And thanks for inviting us.
Thank you, Elise. That was a fantastic overview. Before I move on, does anyone have a quick question about the King County Prop 1 campaign? Wonderful. Well, again, that was King County Proposition 1, Keep Harborview Strong. We are encouraging a support on that. We also want folks to know about Seattle Proposition 1. I know it's a little bit confusing, both equally important investments in our local infrastructure. For that, the Yes on Transit campaign, we are joined this morning by Kelsey Mesher, Advocacy Director at the Transportation Choices Coalition. Kelsey, thanks for being on our call this morning.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's great to see everyone again. So yeah, again, I'm Kelsey Mesher. I work with Transportation Choices Coalition, and we are working hard to support the Yes for Transit campaign, which is Seattle's Proposition 1. So this measure is a renewal and modification of an existing tax that is expiring this year. In 2014, Seattle voters approved a transportation benefit district tax, which has for the last several years been expanding metro bus service in the city. So basically the transit system that you know today is in thanks to this tax. Just one fact to show how much this has changed mobility in our city. In 2015, a quarter of households were within 10-minute frequent service. So that's 10-minute bus service. And last year, that number jumped from 25% to 70%. So 70% of households now live within a 10-minute walk to 10-minute bus service. And I realize that households is a weird measure, especially for lots of folks working with unhoused population, but that's a measure that they're using, and I thought did show the impact of this measure. So this is a renewal and modification. It's modified because last year, you'll remember Initiative 976 was a Tim Eyman initiative passed. And so that means we couldn't do a straight renewal because car tab fees were voted out as an option. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit in the weeds here. Breaking news, the Supreme Court ruled today that Tim Eyman's initiative was unconstitutional. So actually, perhaps in the future, we will return to a car tab, but for now, Seattle's Proposition 1 will be a 0.015% sales tax. And so this will pay for 150,000 bus service hours. It will pay for affordability programs, so free bus passes for high school students, as well as free passes for Seattle Housing Authority residents. And it will generate about $42 million a year for both service and these affordability programs. I guess one other thing to note is that because of the pandemic, it is getting more expensive to operate buses. We want to make sure people have the ability to social distance on buses, and we need to be sanitizing and adding more PPE for drivers. And so that's one challenge facing Metro. But we do know that 40% of riders are still riding the bus. So even though ridership is down, there's a ton of people out there still depending on transit every single day. I'm sure many of you and many of the people you work with are among those. Final thing is that this is the very last measure on your ballot if you're voting in Seattle. And so we are encouraging people, please don't get ballot fatigue and drop off, please vote all the way down your ballot so you can make sure to get to Seattle Prop 1. And that's what I've got, and I'm happy to answer questions or send more information.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. We will see if there's questions at the end that we can field your way. And yes, please fill out the entirety of your very long ballot. There's some very important things at the bottom that need to be filled out. Now, we want to move on to the measure that Allison mentioned that was endorsed on the state level. This is going to show up as Referendum 90 on your ballot. We are fortunate this morning to be joined by Mary Ellen Stone, the Executive Director at the King County Sexual Assault Resource Center, who's going to tell us a little bit about why this referendum campaign is so important for our community. Mary, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. I want to say thank you so much. And Allison, thanks for your leadership. It's just nice to see you here. What a time we're in, right? Referendum 90. This ratifies, and that's my word, the Senate Bill 5395 that was passed last session. What that bill did is say that students have to have age-appropriate, comprehensive sexual health education starting in elementary school. And this is really where the controversy now is, but starting in elementary school. Emphasis on age-appropriate, medically accurate information. The reason this is so important is that we know that young people don't have good information. They don't have accurate information about sexuality, about their anatomy, about medically, competent information, nor do they have good information around social emotional learning. And that is all tied into this particular initiative. So there was a referendum or initiative drive, rather, I'm mixing the two. What we want to vote on is yes on R90. There was an initiative drive earlier this year to repeal what the legislature passed last session. So on your ballot, you'll see R90, and we're urging people to vote yes for that. There are some reasons. So the rationale is we know that good comprehensive sexual health education can reduce things like teen pregnancy, sexually transmitted infections. We also know it's connected to sexual assault and sexual assault prevention, which tends to not get as much play. But we also know when young people can talk about issues of consent and what healthy relationships look like. And when younger students, elementary school kids, have information around social emotional learning, how to be a good friend, how to be empathetic, how to have good communication skills. And these are pretty foundational pieces that also contributes to and reduces the risk for sexual assault or sexually assaultive behavior later on. So we are strongly working on this. There are about 130 organizations across the state working. Planned Parenthood, certainly, and ACLU are leading this, but a number of the sexual assault organizations are involved as well. And I'm happy to just share a quick screen. Here is, Here is our piece. And I'm happy to get this out to all of you as well. So hopefully you can provide this information to your constituents and we can approve this. Apparently the polling is looking good, so we're encouraged. It's a good piece in Crosscut today. So your help is certainly much appreciated. And I can certainly talk on, but there are a lot of you, and I know you have a big agenda, so I don't want to take up your time. Well, Mary, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. That was wonderful. We are going to hold a little bit of time at the end of this for questions, so please stay on a little bit longer if you can. That was wonderful. Thank you. All right. And finally, the last item we want to highlight for you is that the King County Charter has some proposed amendments that you'll be voting on, one of which relates to the sale of properties for the use of affordable housing. We are joined this morning by Mallory Van Abema, Advocacy and Policy Manager with the Housing Development Consortium, who's going to tell us a little bit more about this. Mallory, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much for inviting us to be here. HTC is really excited about Charter Amendment 2. We look at the King County Charter as essentially the county's constitution. It's a little bit easier to amend our regional constitution than it is the federal. And in 2018, in the legislature, a bill, House Bill 2382, passed, and it allowed counties to dispatch local governments, regional governments to dispatch their surplus or underutilized land for the purposes of affordable housing. They can either transfer that land outright, donate it for affordable housing. They can sell it below market value, or they can retain it for a low cost lease. So there are options. And so this charter amendment, King County Charter Amendment 2, is purely looking to amend the charter so that that state law can be locally enacted. We've got quite a lot of surplus and underutilized land that the county owns in King County, and we are really excited because land acquisition is far and away one of the highest cost barriers associated with affordable housing development. And so we're pleased to see this on the ballot. We're a member of the PRO committee, and we've put together a website that I'm going to drop in the chat now, which has a video statement, some overviews of the amendment, and then I also want to share a tool. Enterprise Community Partners has developed a tool called the Home and Hope Mapping Tool. So if you're looking to see, what does this actually look like? Where are these surplus lands located? You can use this database that they've developed, which is analyzing all of the surplus land within King County. You can change the ownership categories to isolate those parcels that are owned by the county itself. And you will be surprised how many blue dots you see all across the county that would be very great sites for, in particular with the Home and Hope initiative, they'd like to see affordable housing and childcare sited on the same parcel. So use that tool. It's a really great resource forever, but please consider voting yes on Charter Amendment 2 in King County, and happy to take questions, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here, Mallory. So yes, and thank you to all four of you. That was a great overview of opportunities to invest in the healthcare, education, housing, and transportation supports that our community needs to thrive. I know that was a lot of great information that we just shared with you. We want to pause for just a moment here and see if anyone has any questions or anything that you would like to be clarified from what you just heard. Well, there are a host of resources that these four campaigns have made available for further review. We'll be sharing all of those resources, including some toolkits, some graphics, and suggested messaging from various campaigns in the follow-up email that we really do encourage you to be using through your social media when having conversations with friends and family to get the word out. Again, ballot fatigue is real. We want to make sure that you get all the way through to the very bottom of your ballot to make sure that the city, county, and state measures that are there get the support that they need.
And I think the other thing that I want to invite everyone who is a direct service provider here to consider is, how are you going to share this information with the people whom you work with? The libraries are closed. People are having trouble even getting access to newspapers, and information is constrained for people without homes. So you have a responsibility to share this information within your programs, and it's always useful to remind you that while nonprofit organizations cannot endorse or oppose candidates for public office, we can promote or oppose referenda and ballot initiatives and propositions. That's why the coalition and many of your organizations are taking positions or leadership roles. Transportation Choices Coalition, the King County Sexual Assault Resource Center, Housing Development Consortium are endorsing and helping to run these efforts to educate voters about how we use public dollars to ensure public good and even public necessities. And at this point, I think you all probably know that it's pretty hard to get access to the basics. And the basics include not only sanitation, clean water, food, fresh clothes when people need it, shelter. It also includes information. So we have a strange circumstance here in which you will probably need to print your own materials for this. I see there's an exchange in the chat about people wanting to have access to the beautiful flyer, Mary Ellen, that you shared. So we'll follow up with you. We're going to have staff in the coalition offices in Pioneer Square at least a few days a week, so we can distribute hard copy information if people want and need that. But as you help people register to vote and use their voting rights, which is the next part of our agenda, please also remember that you can share information with them about these initiatives and help explain, even if you yourself aren't taking a position or your agency isn't taking an endorsement position, you can help explain and give people the information they need to make up their own minds when they fill out their ballots. So as we have done every year since I started at the coalition, we are helping people register to vote and exercise their voting rights. And that is one of the big pieces of work that our advocacy has focused on, because too often people are essentially sort of erased from the civic discourse. And in fact, our voting laws have contributed to making it more difficult in most places in this country to register to vote and to vote if you do not have a traditional or stable address or place to get mail. Here in Washington, we have one of the strongest vote by mail infrastructures of anywhere in the country. You still need to be able to get your mail. We've also worked to change the laws to expand who can vote and how people can vote and when you can register to vote. So as a reminder, we all work to help change the law at the state level as part of the Washington Voting Rights Coalition to ensure that people could register to vote up to and on election day, which is really useful if you're a procrastinator and really useful if you might have registered and your ballot went somewhere else and you have been very mobile and you don't know where your ballot is. So we want to share some information with you. We're going to put it on our websites, and I'm going to turn things over to Saleena to talk a little bit about how you can update your skills and information and knowledge to help the people whom you work with and serve register and vote. We have some volunteer capacity, but not as much as in previous years because of the circumstances of the pandemic. But you're going to be a crucial, crucial piece of helping people make their voices heard and talking about why their voices matter. You can see Harborview Hall, we need those extra respite beds. We need the Pioneer Square Clinic to not be cramped and dark and, you know, 19th century in appearance. We need buses. We need the buses to come on time. We need kids to learn how to treat each other with respect and decency. And we need to make sure that our public lands are being used for affordable housing. So those are some of the reasons that people might want to vote, even if they really are disgusted and turned off by presidential politics, even though we hope they'll vote for that too. So Saleena, I'm going to let you do your piece.
Yeah, my piece will be pretty short, but I just want to say first off, I know I've been getting some emails from people just about voter registration, and so I just wanted to thank everybody for their patience. This is my second full-time week here, so I'm really trying to get up to speed and really want to help support you all in getting the people you serve registered to vote and to help them vote. I'm happy to say that we finally have dates and times for training. So the first one is coming up pretty shortly. So it's Tuesday, October 20th from 5:30 to 6:45 p.m. And then the second one is Thursday, October 22nd from 12 to 1 p.m. So evening and lunchtime hours, hopefully that makes it easier to fit it into your busy schedules. But if neither of those times work for you, just please email me and we can really figure something out. As Allison mentioned, a lot of the trainings are going to be geared towards service providers, and a lot of the trainings will just cover like how to register people to vote, what information they need, troubleshooting common issues, and also a lot of it is going to take into consideration the huge looming dark cloud that is the global pandemic. And so just stuff like that, that's what we will cover. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. If your organization doesn't have a staff member that can help with this, let us know. We can try to coordinate either staff or volunteers to help you in these efforts. But as Allison mentioned, just because of COVID and because, mostly because of COVID really, and because of reduced volunteer capacity, we might not be able to serve everyone, but we will try to help as much as we can. And then I'll just drop my email in the chat. And you can reach out to me about really anything. And then I know that Sasha will soon have a registration form to sign up for those trainings. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or let me know.
Great. And also we will be posting on the website shortly a flyer that Saleena is working on that you can download. And it's got basic information. In fact, here is the little preview version of it, but it's got information about the in-person voting sites, as well as a link to what I believe are now 73 ballot drop boxes. So just as a reminder, if you're like me and you registered to vote as soon as you move, you're pretty much set. You're going to get your ballot in the mail if you're lucky enough to have a place to do that. But for the folks whom we are concerned with, particularly people who are unsheltered or who are in and out, it's going to be really important to be able to explain to them that there are places where they can go in person. There will be masks available. There will be hand sanitizer available. And if somebody either didn't get their ballot or hasn't registered to vote and wants to, those are going to be the walk-in places where people will be able to get help from the King County election staff. We're going to be focusing on places like the Compass Client Services Office at 77 South Washington Street, and hope to be working with other partners to go to places where people are already gathered. But if you run a tiny house village, a shelter, a permanent supportive housing program, you actually are the best person to help the folks whom you work with register or update their registration or check to see if they're registered. And we will be available to troubleshoot and help. The one thing that I want to float for you guys, and we're going to elicit your input on this, is these are such difficult times. Usually we would be talking, it would be easier to do something like to have a ballot party where you get the stacks of materials from the different campaigns and share them with people, help people fill their forms out, remind people where the nearest ballot drop box to your location is. Some of those things you can still do, and we really need and want you to do them. It is not okay to put your ballot in the mail on the last day. I'm just going to say it now. I wish I didn't have to say that, but it is going to be your responsibility to make sure that people's ballots get completed and dropped off at the nearest ballot drop box or get into the mail. We're going to recommend 1 week before November 3rd. we're going to explore with you, and we want to hear from you. You can put something in the chat or you can email Saleena afterwards. The idea of doing sort of a technical assistance / moral support activity on both Tuesday, October 27th, so 1 week before the election, and on Tuesday, November 3rd, election day, so that if there's anything last minute that comes up or you forgot, is it yes on R90 or no on R90? It's yes. Then you can call or you can share your stories. You know, every time we help people register to vote, we encounter folks who think that they have lost their voting rights forever because of an arrest, because of a conviction, or because of a felony on their records. And most of the time, when we're able to talk with them, we're able to tell them either they never lost their right to vote, they just thought they did, or they were told they did, or their voting rights have been restored. So those are the folks whom you need to be talking with, and we'd like to hear those stories. Sometimes it is incredibly powerful if someone shares their own experience of having not voted for their entire adult life, only to be able to vote for the first time at age 50 something. We hear those stories, and sharing them is really powerful. So we're going to think about having kind of a Zoom drop-in space and invite you to join us and, you know, maybe share with the people where you're working. We think we're going to also do some things like have some of our artists and musician friends join us, because these are sort of dark times and the issues are really serious, and we need to inspire people to take action. So we don't only want to talk, we also want to remember what it feels like to be in community together, and share story and share music and share art. Some of the campaign art that is out there is fantastic. So please feel free to send us links, send us your materials, like the beautiful brochure that KSARC put together. And we'll be sharing some of that with you probably the Tuesday before Election Day and on Election Day itself. Okay. I'm not going to try to see the chat because I'm just going to, I think, move us on. But before I do that, I just want to recognize, you know, Elise, Mary Ellen, and I think, oh, I can't see because everybody keeps moving around, but we might have lost some of our other presenters. But does anybody have any last questions in case they're not able to stay through the end of the meeting? Mallory, thank you, Mallory. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. You are, of course, most welcome to stay. We're grateful to you for the work you have done in the community, you continue to do, and for taking on the responsibility of helping to make sure that that good policy happens even in a pandemic, especially in a pandemic.
Allison, can I mention something really quick? So I was really happy to hear the information you were sharing on voter registration. Sorry, I joined kind of late, so it was the right timing because you just started talking about it, and that's all I've been a lot of what I've been thinking about. So yeah, I was really glad to hear that. I just want to mention you might have mentioned this earlier, so I hope I'm not repeating something, but Julie Wise, the King County elections person, said that if you do not receive your ballot by October 19th, to call 206-309-VOTE. That's the voter hotline. So it's important if you don't get it by then. They're being mailed out now. We're also kind of in the process of rapidly trying to register, you know, voters, give people the opportunity to do that at our villages and our different sites. It's a little bit of a challenge for us because we have these 3 AmeriCorps volunteers that can't have any involvement in that. Oh my God, yes. Which is just totally sucks in my opinion. That's because the, you know, it's, Congress passes it, and you know, I won't go into why the different requirements they have. Oh, it's because ultra-conservative politicians wrote into the authorizing legislation
for the AmeriCorps Vista anti-poverty program decades ago that they were not allowed to participate in non-partisan voter registration activity, which is, to use a Yiddish word, a shanda. Don't worry, Josh, we will help you.
Thank you.
It's terrible. But thank you so much for sharing that. That is important. Lots of folks may not know this, but if you have access to the internet and a printer, you can print out a replacement ballot. And we have copies, hard copies of voter registration forms, but pretty soon you are going to need to be helping, again, the folks where you are working, print out replacement ballots, or as I said, be prepared to go to these in-person voting sites. And those in-person voting sites, Saleena's brochure is going to share this information. It's also at the King County Elections website, but they're open on Saturday, on Halloween, October 31st. They're open on the Monday before Election Day and on Election Day. As usual, lots of people, procrastinators like me, will wait until Election Day. Help people not wait until Election Day. People aren't going to be happy waiting online. So help them go on Halloween if they need to go in person. So we'll be sharing lots more information as this goes, but what I want you all to do is to make a plan for how are you going to help people, whether it's at Lehigh, at El Centro La Raza, at the Chief Seattle Club, Seattle Indian Health Board, DESC. You all have access to people all the time, and you're the best people to help folks register to vote. Okay. So just quickly about City of Seattle and King County advocacy. All right, so one more time, we get to celebrate health through housing. You know, we had Executive Constantine on at the beginning of the call. For those of you who joined late, you missed it. We had the King County Executive read our mission statement. And in addition to our mission statement, we have our new vision statement. And our vision at the coalition is a region that acts on a shared sense of responsibility that every person has a home. And I venture to say that the Health Through Housing plan to raise 1/10 of 1 cent sales tax, bond against it, and buy currently empty buildings, put people in them fast, and support people and operations in them while we transform them into permanent supportive housing is one of the best opportunities that we have ever had to advance that vision. So you all generated, I think, 400 emails to the King County Executive and to King County Council members in a week. We had frontline staff, outreach workers, staff at supportive housing programs, people who had themselves experienced homelessness, agency directors speaking not only at the King County Council meetings, but at the Renton City Council, at the Bellevue City Council, at Kent, and making powerful connections between what it means for people to have a home, privacy, dignity, stability, rest, a bathroom, and the health of those individuals as well as our whole community. We're trying to do something big because the need is big. And I think that it is a powerful testimony to the nature of your work, your community connections, and our coalition that we have built together over 40 years that we were able to mobilize so fast. What I've been saying to coalition staff is this is why we organize. This is why we put so much effort into doing things that seem like they shouldn't have to take so much effort, because when you need to mobilize, you have to have been doing the organizing all along. And that's why elections are a great opportunity to leverage those relationships. We're so grateful that this is a community that has a clear vision. And we're so grateful that we have some political leaders like Executive Constantine and like at least 8 of the King County Council members. And even though several suburban cities, including Bellevue, the second biggest city in the state, and Renton and Kent, and some smaller communities, including North Bend, Issaquah, and Snoqualmie, voted to keep their portion of this sales tax and use it locally and not include it in the pot to bond against. I have to tell you, here's the silver lining of that. All those communities voted to impose a sales tax to do more affordable housing. So while it might not be in the pool, or it might not be fully in the pool, so the city of Issaquah said we need $2 million to finish our transit-oriented development program, and then the rest of it we'll put in the pool. Yep, that's good. They may not be on board yet, but I think this is also part of why we play the long game. As John mentioned at the beginning, part of why the council could take this vote is because of legislation that was passed, thanks in part to coalition efforts last year during the legislative session. That's House Bill 1590. It's actually even further back than that. 5 years ago, we all worked on 2263, which was what authorized communities to impose a 1/10 of 1 cent sales tax to support affordable housing and mental health. And so the arc is at least 5 years long, and it continues. We now have to go into the implementation plan development, and that's where, again, your voices will be incredibly important. We need to ensure not only that we're housing people experiencing chronic homelessness, but that we are doing so in a way that drives down the racial disparities of who is homeless and who gets access to supportive housing, and that engages other community organizations that may not currently be doing this work to share their expert knowledge and community connections and ability to provide supports and care as part of broadening the range of providers and housing that is available to people in our community. So there's a lot more work to come. There's going to be what's called a trailer bill that 2 lawmakers are already working on to introduce in the 2021 legislative session. And that's also going to be really important because that trailer bill is an opportunity to incentivize suburban cities that might think that they want to opt out to maybe think about whether they want to opt in. And it's going to be a really important way that we can also say to other communities across Washington state, you could go ahead and use this resource too to address chronic homelessness. The goal of 2,000 people will perhaps be a little bit diminished. We have to see what the money actually looks like, but that's almost half the people who are currently experiencing chronic homelessness in our county. That is huge, that is important, and I hope you all feel, you know, the virtual joy that is emanating. We too have a thank you message, and I'm going to ask Jason or Sasha or Saleena to put it in the chat. We updated our advocacy link, so it's really the same link that we've been using, and it's just bit.ly Health Through Housing KC. And it would be really great for you to send a little message to your King County Council members. The only council member who voted no was Councilmember Reagan Dunn. Councilmember Reagan Dunn sits on the governing body of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. So if you are in Councilmember Dunn's district, I actually want to talk to you because we have a lot of education to do with Councilmember Dunn. And no one is better to do that education than you all. So seriously, look up whether you are in his district and let's talk. On the City of Seattle end of things, I am grateful to the folks at Decriminalize Seattle and King County Equity Now for giving me an opportunity to take a look at the statement that they are going to be releasing shortly. that is a statement about putting a solidarity budget forward for the 2021 budget. I think you all know we worked really hard to make sure that the 2020 rebalancing package was focused on housing justice and racial equity. And I think you all know that we advocated for council to override the mayor's veto of that 2020 balancing package, which they did, which had, among other things, the effect of defunding the NAV team. We all know that law enforcement is not the right way to do outreach. We also know that taking the premise that people experiencing homelessness who have nowhere else to go when our shelters are full and it's a pandemic really should not be forced to move unless we have something better for them. The CDC guidelines are clear, and we've been having some pretty serious conversations with people in the mayor's office and the Human Services Department about what good, skilled, coordinated outreach and engagement for people who are abandoned outside looks like. So I essentially have to say, stay tuned. Some things will be happening through the budget process. Some things will be happening through conversations. And as we enter into this, we are absolutely standing in solidarity with the Black-led and Indigenous and BIPOC organizations that are trying to push for a transformation of how we distribute public resources in this community. Nobody thinks it's going to be easy. Nobody thinks it's going to happen in one budget. But when we declare racism a public health emergency and we declare homelessness an emergency, we have to see some major shifts in how we bring in money and where we put the money. And I think you all know that very well, which is why your voices are the voices that we seek to lift up as we do our education and advocacy. And the people whom you work with really have an extraordinary opportunity, I think, to participate and be heard in ways that perhaps have not been possible before. So we'll be talking a lot more about that. And I think I'm just going to pause and see if anybody has any questions or things they want to throw in about either City of Seattle or King County budget or related advocacy. Okay. Great. So we have some more important updates, information about something that's happening next week that I think if you work with people who are at risk of overdose, you really will want to know about. At a future meeting, we're going to invite Brad Finegood from the Public Health Department to come talk about overdose prevention. But among the resources that I think Jason is going to share in our resource update section is a really important free webinar that is coming up. We have actually a number of public health related resources there. And then we're going to try to end a little bit early, but what I'll invite you to do is start thinking now about how you feel about the following two things. Since the pandemic began, we've tried to sort of hold space at the end of our meetings for poetry reading, for live musical performance, for a wonderful interactive art class that the Path with Art folks brought to us. And a lot of people have really enjoyed that, and we have really enjoyed it. It's part of the way that we're trying to honestly just care for each other and support the people who are doing direct service work in particular. This is hard and important work always. It is extraordinarily difficult under the current circumstances. I think the increase in overdose deaths is just one example of the enormous personal pain and suffering that our members, you all, bear witness to every day and every night. So we want to think with you about how to offer things that are nourishing, nurturing, encouraging, that build our solidarity and give people space to be together, whether that's to grieve or to celebrate or just to be. But we also want to know if that's working for you. And we're also thinking that a 2-hour Zoom meeting is really probably too long. We've met in person from 9 to 11 for years and years and years on the third Thursday of every month. For the foreseeable future, I would say into probably through the end of 2021, we're going to not be meeting in person. And we are, of course, very sad about that, but we are determined to keep everybody as safe as possible and reduce the spread of this disease. So we're thinking that we probably need to shorten our membership meetings, but then think about other shorter opportunities to bring people together for various kinds of information sharing, advocacy, and support. So we're going to ask you about that in a more systematic way, but I just wanted to share that with all of you who are still on the call today to get the juices flowing. And I'm going to turn back to Jason for the last part of our agenda.
Thank you, Allison. And yes, we've been doing some soul searching and reflecting on the Zoom fatigue that we assume that many of you are also feeling. So please reach out to us and kind of let us know how we can make this format more approachable and useful for the work that you're doing. So a couple of exciting community resource updates. There are 2 things that are launching or coming online today that we want to make you aware of. The first is a COVID-19 relief fund that is being made available to immigrants and refugees through the city of Seattle. Now, many of you know that the CARES Act that provided various forms of COVID relief had a lot of cruel and unnecessary restrictions related to immigration status in terms of who is eligible for assistance. In response, some local municipalities such as Seattle have dedicated their own funds to help people who may not have the proper documentation status to qualify for federal benefits. The City of Seattle COVID-19 Relief Fund is going online today at 5 p.m. It's not a first come, first serve process. So we do encourage you to apply early, but don't worry if you don't make it the very first day. They are using sort of a risk assessment to see who is most in need of these funds. The application is available only as an online form, although it is available in multiple languages. They're offering Amharic, Korean, Chinese, Somali, Spanish, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. This fund is available for those who attend school or live or work within the Seattle city boundaries and meet the income requirements thereof. The application deadline is going to be Thursday, November the 5th, 3 weeks from now. So again, we encourage you to submit your information soon and then wait for the follow-up. The other program that is launching today that we are very excited to announce is the annual subsidized pass pilot program. This is a program that is being launched by King County Metro and Sound Transit to provide a no-cost Orca pass for qualifying clients. The Orca Lift program is, a fantastic investment in our community. However, the Orca Lift card does charge $50 a month. And so for people with little to no income, that can still be a pretty significant barrier to accessing transportation services. The pass is going to be made available to residents of everyone who lives in the Sound Transit region, that's Pierce, King, and Snohomish counties. The benefit is available for those living at or below 80% of the federal poverty limit. And for the time being, they are tying eligibility to enrollment in a handful of state benefit programs. So if you're working with clients who are receiving TANF, refugee cash assistance, ABD or HEN, SSI or pregnant women's assistance, they are eligible to receive this benefit. There's 3 agencies that will be administering these annual pass cards to eligible clients. Those 3 are DSHS, Catholic Community Services, and the Public Health Department. So if you're working with a client who receives one of those benefit programs, we encourage you to have them follow up with anyone through one of those 3 organizations that they might already be receiving services through in order to sort of jump in line. Yes, Allison.
Thank you, Jason. I just feel like my job now is to be the historian. So thank you. It's so exciting to hear you describe that. This is a free bus pass, you guys. When years ago, the ride-free zone in downtown Seattle was eliminated, also the result of suburban cities fighting with King County, by the way, the coalition thought, oh my God, what are we going to do? That's terrible. So many people experiencing homelessness, so many service providers rely on that and just jump on the bus and get to where they need to go. And because we're a county-wide coalition, I'm proud to say that our full membership quickly said, hey, you know what? We actually need that kind of access county-wide. And that is what started us advocating for the Orca Lift Reduced Fare Program, which in partnership with folks like the Transportation Choices Coalition, Share Wheel, the Transit Riders Union, and all of our members, we actually also got passed in record time. It is still the biggest, broadest, reduced fare transit pass anywhere in the country. But even as we advocated to pass it, we knew it wasn't going to be enough because, as Jason said, half price is still too much if you don't have anything. And what I want to say is King County Metro has really proven itself to be a leader in public policy around transit access for everyone. We're in the middle of a pandemic and they are hundreds of millions of dollars in the hole. And they still moved ahead with this free pass program because they know it's the right thing to do, because we all have been working with them for years, and because everyone understands that if we deprive people of access to transit, it is in fact terrible for the whole community. So I think it is something to be incredibly proud of, and obviously to get the word out about very expeditiously. This is one enormous boost to people's budgets, and Jason has, summarized it beautifully, but so many of the people whom you're working with are already eligible for it. You just need to help them get the pass.
Thank you, Allison. It is a significant victory that we've worked for years to accomplish. I'll send details in the follow-up, but just again, I want to highlight the 3 agencies to reach out to: DSHS, Public Health Department, and Catholic Community Services are the best places to direct your clients to apply for this program. And then a couple very quick things I wanted to mention. We are excited to announce that the Pandemic EBT program has been extended through the duration of the 2020-21 school year. Pandemic EBT was a new benefit that was created to recognize the fact that students in most of the country were not able to claim the free or reduced price lunch that they were eligible for due to school closures. This program works very similarly to a SNAP EBT card. It's a food voucher that gets loaded onto a card that can then be used to purchase uncooked foodstuffs at a store. The program has been extended to also include eligibility for those who are in preschool programs who also qualify for food programs. Now, we don't yet have the details of exactly what this is going to look like. OSPI and DSHS are meeting to sort of hammer out those details. The key thing that I want you all to know about this is that the best thing you can do to help families connect with food resources is to help them apply for free and reduced price lunch at the schools in which they attend. In the follow-up email, I'm going to share a link that will help you look up who the best point of contact is in your school district for nutrition enrollment. Eligibility for this program is tethered to free and reduced price lunch. It's not connected to other income factors. It's not connected to immigration status. It will not be considered a public charge. So again, this is another rare resource that is available with much fewer strings attached than most others. We just want to make you aware of this, and as soon as we have further details, we will let you know. And then finally, since we last met, we can all tell that the weather has turned cold, which means that flu and cold season is upon us. And like many of you, we are concerned about the double whammy of COVID and flu. So we really want to get the word out about flu vaccines. The Public Health Department has put together a list of community vaccination locations that are available on the Healthcare for the Homeless Network website, which we will be sharing. The Public Health Department also wants you to know that they are more than happy to schedule a visit to come out to your program and offer vaccination services to your clients and staff. They want folks to email vaccineteam@kingcounty.gov, which I put in the chat box there. They're hoping that they can combine this effort with their COVID-19 testing that may come as separate services, but you are encouraged to ask about both when you reach out to them here. So again, we encourage you all to get your shot and do take advantage of public health as they are making themselves available to help those you serve get vaccinated as well. And then that takes us to the end of our meeting, which is a little bit early on purpose, as Allison mentioned. Allison, do you have any remarks that you want to close us out with, or any questions that you'd like to pose to the group? Oh, I think you're muted.
Thanks, Jason. Sorry, I've lost my visual. No, I mean, I think what we can do as staff is we can stick around and talk maybe more informally if people want. I remember the first Zoom meeting that we held, we thought about trying to unmute everybody and just have a conversation. That seems so naive now, but we really do love to see your faces and to hear from you. So we could do a little bit of 15-minute conversation time for those who are interested in and able to stay. I know many of you have lots of important work to do. Sasha is working on getting the voter registration training information signed up. So maybe the last thing I'll just say is Saleena has shared that this coming Tuesday and a week from today, next Thursday, we're doing one in the evening and one during lunchtime. But really, here's the thing. For those of you who are experienced service providers, you don't need extensive training to help people register to vote. It's a form. It's a pretty well designed form, and there are just a few key things that you need to know. We just want you to start registering people so that they have a chance to get their ballots in the mail before the election. And we want to be a resource to you for the tricky, sticky bits. So maybe we can even talk a little bit now about any voter registration specific issues folks might have. And then just say that we have a membership meeting on November 19th. Obviously, that will be after Election Day. Presumably, we will know the results of the election by then, but possibly not. So one thing I do just want to say is we are here for you. We've heard from people, you know, throughout the last 7 months. We know that you are just holding down so many things that are being windswept, and you are working so hard to adapt your services. I mentioned that Jason and Saleena are going to do some census and voter registration work right after this, and they're going to meet one of the outreach workers in Georgetown, where she has started what Reach is doing, which is pop-ups under tents with electrical extension cords to help people get access to benefits, to do case management, to have conversations with folks at a site where there's already a food bank. We're really interested in hearing how are you adapting and how can we either support you or share the information about it. This winter is going to be terrible. And we are never going to stop fighting for people to have warmth, safety, dry places to be. And we know that thousands of people are going to remain outside. So we're going to have to find ways to never accept that as normal and keep people's spirits up and keep speaking truth to power. That is our collective job, and we embrace it, but we don't want to gloss over the parts that are really hard. You know, I see people's faces here, and I just, I really want to acknowledge and tell you that we're here for you. You know, we are an adaptable organization. We are learning new ways to do our work, just as you're learning new ways to do your work. And as much as possible, we'd like to try to move forward together. So, you know, if there's somebody who, hi Barb, if there's somebody who wants to say something, you know, we can try having folks unmute themselves. I'm going to take a look at the chat. I know there's some people in the chat. And maybe let's start. I see Nefertari. Do you want to say something? Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, two things. Actually, at our agency, we just had a meeting, kind of improv meeting, to talk about these evictions and to try to get in front of the ball instead of behind it. So there's two things. I'm very interested in what other people may be doing around this and how we can cross-share information in a way that's resourceful. We've talked about putting together a list. We're still in the process of clearing that out. So that's one part.
Mm-hmm.
The second part is in terms of the vote.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the fact that we are voting so late. I always feel like the vote is done by the time it gets to Washington, but that's my stuff. But
yeah.
It would be nice to have, I want to know where we can get voter signs. So I like to think about how do we take use of our Zoom? So every meeting that we're having, that we're saying something behind us, vote. Also signs, I've suggested to my organization that we have a sign outside of our building. So if you know where to access those things, where we can get those, that would be great.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I do. I'm going to go look for them. Nefertari, can you remind us, what is your agency?
I'm sorry, my agency is Wellspring Family Services.
Great. Thank you. Yes. Sasha just sent me a little message, and I'm going to invite her to share her suggestion, which is in part related to what you said. Maybe I won't try to find it right now, but I will say I've just learned there are several sites where there are artists who have made beautiful, powerful signs, and they're available free for downloading and printing. And so if you have access to a printer, you can print them. We also have some really simple but beautiful signs that are lots of different hands that just say the word vote. And we can get you some of those. And we will share information about those voting images and see if we can maybe even get some donated posters, because I agree with you, just inspiring people and reminding people is so important. We can vote earlier than other parts of the country because of vote by mail. So that's why we need to sort of, you know, if your ballots are arriving by October 19th, you actually could kind of help nudge that forward. So
Yeah.
that could be
kind of, I think in terms of the East Coast and all those places, because I live in both, right? The last thing I want to say is, I know in one of these meetings, one, I appreciate this, and I know people get Zoom fatigue, and every time I hear that, I think to myself, we're not on the streets.
Yes.
That's one. Two, Whether it's long or not, you can take pauses and you allow for that. And I want to thank the staff for how you've set that up. And I'm certain you'll send out a Survey Monkey or something to that extent. But I wanted to go back to something that happened right after the George Floyd or somewhere around there. And there was talk about creating space for people to be able to talk about the trauma. And I know at that time, there were a lot of things going on in a lot of organizations. I do think because of how this coalition crosses barriers, economics and racial and what have you, gender, it would be nice at times during the meeting to have a space to go into affinity groups with those various groups to have conversation.
Thank you so much. I am deeply grateful to you for sharing those reflections. It's really hard to know without the in-person interactions whether what we're doing is working or not. So it's truly helpful to hear the feedback and the suggestion, and that's actually a perfect connection. I think we will take that and think about it and really sort of, I think, do what this coalition always does, which is to say, that's great, and will you help us do it? Because I think your role is to help lead and drive the work that we do, and maybe a breakout room or a space that you could help to lead and facilitate would be a powerful way to proceed.
Allison, I was also going to say I'm a queer person of color. My father's a first-generation immigrant. I'm also on board with that idea because I think it is important to hold that space. And I'm very happy as a staff person to help facilitate sort of like affinity group meeting room as well.
Beautiful, thank you. And I think Sasha, I can't quite see if Sasha is here or not, but she sent me a message of the same. So I think you guys just.
That was me that sent you.
Oh,
that.
Was it you? Okay, I'm trying to read my phone and the chat. Pardon me, Saleena. Great. Well, you're on. Thank you both. And now would be a great time, if that resonates with someone else, to drop a note in the chat or reach out to Saleena or Nefertari and offer to be with them. Thank you so much. That's very significant. Great. I know, Virginia, you asked about the new COVID-19 immigrant relief funds. Oh, and Elizabeth, thank you. The Amplifier Art Site is one of the beautiful local art sites. Wonderful. Jason, if you have ready access maybe to the City of Seattle program link, perhaps you could drop that in the chat for Virginia and others. But also, as you know, Jason and Sasha and now Saleena do an enormous amount of work to put these resources on our blog. So if it's not there yet, it will be shortly. And, you know, to another point that Nefertari raised, this issue of there are so many different programs, where do you gather all the information in one place about rental assistance or this COVID relief fund and that COVID relief fund? And it is actually quite challenging to keep up with all of that. So I think that's where some of our member organizations, like the Tenants Union, like Wellspring, like our partners at the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance, and actually the Seattle Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs has helped to create a special listing of services and programs that are available to immigrants and refugees without discriminatory provisions. I think this is part of where we need to do some resource sharing among ourselves to try to, you know, not reinvent the wheel, but bring forward, here's a good place to look, here's a good resource list. Great. Oh, I see Nicholas's comment about the United Way's rental assistance program being the only one. I don't believe it is the only one. It is one of the largest, but in part, this is the challenge, right? So the United Way, as you all probably remember, their initial rental assistance program, I think, got so many requests for rental assistance in the first day that they had to close because they would have expended all of their resources, and they did, and then they worked to replenish it. This is, just as a reminder, part of why we absolutely need $100 million in rent relief at the federal level. There's just no way that local governments can really fully meet the need. We're probably also going to need action at the state level. There are programs that are offering rent relief, and I don't want to attempt to list them all because that's actually not something that we are tracking. But I think that,
Allison,
Linda, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you for jumping in here. Linda Taylor with the Urban League.
The Urban League and Wellsprings are in partnership with United Way, and we're doing rental relief. And the way it works is we're doing it in chunks. We're doing it by units, apartment buildings, apartment servicers. And so we're taking on thousands of people at a time, attempting to write one check.
Got it. Very interesting.
If they don't qualify, they can go in and one at a time apply for a lottery. And the lottery keeps going. The lottery only means what agency gets the client. So it's right on United Way's website. We also have mortgage relief in Pierce County. You go on Pierce County's website and sign up for it. And I just got an email yesterday that Skagit County has some rental relief also. And all of these programs, you go on to their website. The City of Seattle's rental relief is separate from the King County with United Way. So the Urban League has their hand in all of the rental relief in partnership with Wellsprings. So there's a lot of it going on, and we're excited. We're really excited, and we have started.
Thank you. Can you say a little bit more, Linda, about how it's working, that you're helping a building at a time?
Right, that's kind of what it is. It's a building at a time, so that we communicate. United Way communicates with the landlord first of all. The landlord has to opt in, and then they have to forgive some of the rent.
Okay.
And then we make a lump sum payment to catch people up.
Great. Thank you.
The way the mortgage one works also. The mortgage one, well, the mortgage one's not going to allow you to forgive, but it will allow you to make 4 payments.
Okay. And that is for King County?
No, the mortgage one is only Pierce County.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, you said that.
Uh-huh.
So I am getting the sense your expertise, the folks from Wellspring, the people from the United Way, and maybe we would want to include the tenants union. That could be an example of a panel presentation that Jason could help facilitate and put together that would share, that would be an attempt to share in one place the different resources, the different criteria.
And they're coming on so fast.
Yes.
I just got the one from Skagit County yesterday.
Okay.
They are coming in. I'm sure with a little investigation, we can find other counties that have rental relief, because the landlord is getting something versus nothing, and that's how they have it figured.
Right.
So
right.
They're getting their full rent, but they do have to forgive what's owed. And of course, it has to be due to COVID. It has to be a certain period of time that we're paying for. We're not paying for anything before March. So we have a team working on it very hard. So we'll see how it works.
Great. Well, I think we should probably follow up with you and with some others to try to, and Nefertari, if you can maybe help us know who the right person at Wellspring would be, or Jason can suss it out or call John Grant.
Well, that's who the right person is, John.
Okay, excellent. Good. I had a
Jesus
feeling that
speaking.
might be.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I'll get my right person on because I know just enough to be dangerous. Just enough. Just enough. Mhm.
Well, thank you. And it will continue to change, and we know that it won't be enough. So I am also just wanting to be sensitive. Nicholas has shared that, you know, he's been waiting for months now. So there is important, good relief and resource available, and it won't be enough.
And if the person got in on the first round at United Way, they can get in on this round also, because this is CARES money and that wasn't.
Okay.
And the city of Seattle's money is not CARES money, so it's not under the same set of restrictions.
Very good. Well, of course, that's an interesting question, because I think some of that jumpstart money that we all worked really hard to pass, the corporate payroll tax that was ancient history back in June and July, some of that year 1 and year 2 revenue is to be dedicated for rent relief, childcare support, and assistance to small businesses. And
through
I think
the city? Is that through the city, Allison?
Well, that was the council's intention, Linda, but the mayor's attempt to follow through on her verbal commitment to $100 million to the Black community relies in part on tapping some of that jumpstart revenue. So that's another example of where we need to try to make sure that we're not pitting different community groups against each other, and not, you know, taking money from one pot and trying to do something good on one side by undermining it on another side. And that's, I think, part of the challenge that we're all living through right now, honestly.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yes.
I learn so much from you every time.
Well, likewise, same here. I really think this will be an interesting thing. The question will be for Jason to connect with the right folks to figure out what's the right timing, maybe, because we know that it's, we want to make sure that the information is getting out to people in a timely way. And we also know that you're probably not lacking for applicants.
No, not at all. What they do is they go to the United Way website and apply, but United Way has reached out to buildings in areas with higher defaults.
Okay.
So they've reached out to a lot, and a lot of landlords have not opted in to the process. So that's another issue.
Indeed. And I think that's where there will be some interesting conversation with our state lawmakers. I know Representative Macri, Senator Saldana, Representative Mia Gregerson, you know, are all really committed to ensuring that, as you said, we need some flexibility on both sides. People
and you know what's happening though is each day that we're involved, and Jonathan talks to them, my person Nyree talks to them, and we're talking to the county and the city. These funds are becoming more flexible because they wrote the rules.
Great.
To stay within some CARES rules, but they basically wrote the rules on how many months we could give out, and you know, so they are listening and they are making it a bit more flexible. So we're having a good time.
That's wonderful.
The Urban League has a shelter for youth 18 to 24 years old that's not being utilized fully. So if you have young people, we'd love to have them. We have them in classes during the day. We help them get a job. We help them just move forward. We have barista training over there. They have cooking classes. We feed them, we wash their clothes, we give them clean clothes. So we're really attempting to do some things for them.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think we do need to make sure to get that information out, especially to the youth serving agencies and to the outreach teams. So definitely appreciate your bringing that up. That's a Seattle-based shelter for 18 to 24-year-olds, and
located in central Seattle.
Right.
I'll get you a new flyer, Allison.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, I want to recognize that it's now 8 minutes after 11, so much for ending early, but this was great. It almost feels like we're in the room together, you guys. But I know that people have other things that they need to go and do, and I just want to thank you so much, and really recognize Jason and Sasha put so much work into prepping these meetings, and you all make these meetings so substantive with your comments and your questions and your suggestions for how we can do things better and differently going forward. It's great to have seen such a warm welcome for Saleena. You can see she's going to bring wonderful capacity and strength and leadership to our group. Oh, Nicholas, I love it. Thank you all so much for everything you're doing. It's really a pleasure to have these meetings with you. It feels different from other meetings. And Sasha's got her background going on. Look at that. She's going to teach me how to do that next. Thank you so much. Wonderful to see you all. We'll be talking, and we'll see you November 19th, if not before. Bye.